بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. We're looking today at the second dalil, the second proof. The first proof was the Quran. We've already looked at the Quran, and now we are looking at the second dalil, which is the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The word Sunnah has different meanings, meaning that in Islam there are different sciences, and every science has its own definition of Sunnah. When you go into fiqh, Sunnah is defined differently. When you go into the science of hadith, it will be defined a bit differently. Yes? So Sunnah linguistically has one meaning anyway, but when it comes to be used in different sciences, it will be carrying different meanings. Yeah. So the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, linguistically, it has one meaning. It's its own meaning. On the other hand, jurists have their own definition of it. While the usul experts, fuqaha, jurists, they have their own definition. But when it comes to the usul experts, the experts in usul al-fiqh, they have their own definition for it as well, for the Sunnah. Hence, linguistically, Sunnah stands for a well-trodden path, often used and adhered to. A path which, you might have gone to a hill, right? Or you might have gone to a jungle, right? Or a forest, right? And there's a place where there wasn't any path, but people, they want to take shortcut and they keep on walking, and it becomes a well-trodden path. Yeah? Now it's being used all the time. Now the old path, which was the main path, it becomes disused. Yeah? So that is, in Arabic we call that Sunnah, because it's being all the time used and trampled upon until it becomes the main path. Yeah? It becomes a path where people keep on walking on. So that is what the Sunnah means. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Sunnat Allahi fi alladhina khalaw min qablu walan tajida li sunnati Allahi tabdila. A consistent practice of Allah. Yes? A consistent path of Allah in the matter of those who have gone before, and you will never find a change in Allah's consistent practice, because it's consistent. Yes? It's all the time. It has to go that way. Thus, in linguistic terms, the Sunnah of a person means his way, which he practices and adheres to, irrelevant whether that way is praiseworthy or blameworthy. Yes? So, in linguistic terms, Sunnah could be your own way, whether it's a bad Sunnah or a good Sunnah. Yes? Sunnah Sayyah, as it comes in the Hadith. Yes? Man sanna sunnatan hasana. One who ends up creating a path of a good Sunnah. Yes? For him is the reward of doing it and the reward of those who will act upon it. وَمَنْ سَنَّ سُنَّةً سَيِّئَةً. Yes? So there the hadith is mentioning in a linguistic term that anyone who tries to create a bad path, an evil path, and then he walks on it and he goes on that and he takes that path and others follow him as well, he will get the blame and others. So in linguistic terms, it could be a path, whether, or a practice, whether it is blameworthy or praiseworthy. But Islamically, it is a path which is praiseworthy because it's the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. According to the terminology of jurists, as some jurists observe, the Sunnah denotes a voluntary act which is part of forms of worship, ibadat, which has been narrated from the Prophet ﷺ, meaning that it is not an obligatory act among them. So, Shawkani, Amidi, they have alluded to that Sunnah in reality, it is, it is the practice of Rasulullah ﷺ, but it's a voluntary act. It is not something obligatory, yes, and it is part of the forms of worship for anyone who follows the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. However, the following understanding of Sunnah can be learned from the books of fiqh. Sunnah, according to the jurists, is used for any desirable act. Yes? Now, according to the fuqaha, any desirable act, irrespective whether that is part of ibadat or not. Yeah? So you can find Shawkani and others who have given a definition, they have restricted to the forms of worship. Yes? But when we go into the fiqh and we go further and probe, we find the definition becomes a bit more broader, whether it is part of worship, whether it is regarding the acts of worship or non-acts of worship. Acts of not worship. Yes? Acts of non-worship, in both sense, the sunnah can be used. Is that becoming a bit more clear? Moreover, one can also learn from the statements of some of the jurists that sometimes sunnah is used as antonym of bid'ah. You might have heard many times, yeah? Oh brother, you're not following sunnah and you're doing a bid'ah. Many times people do say that, yes? So it is used sometimes as an antonym of bid'ah. Oops. Explain about. Yeah, so therefore, they may state that a certain person, oops, I think that should be fine. Okay, so therefore, they may state that a certain person is on sunnah when he does not act, when he doesn't act, that correspond to the practice of the Prophet ﷺ, and certain person is on bid'ah when he does contrary to that. Yes? When he practices otherwise, when he contrary to that. As for the usul experts, they define sunnah as something that was released from the Prophet ﷺ apart from the Quran, verbally, practically or affirmatively. Yes? In that respect, sunnah is a proof amongst the proofs of injunctions and a source amongst the sources of legislation. So, according to usul experts, they say that leave the Quran aside, because two things have come out of the Prophet ﷺ. Verbally, two things, the sunnah and the Quran. But the sunnah, it's not only verbal statements of the Prophet ﷺ, it's also his doings and also his affirmations. He might have seen somebody doing something and he's affirmed. He said, well, this is fine. Yes? This is okay. Whether he said it by his tongue, it's okay, or whether he saw it and he did not reply to it. Yes? So that's an affirmation by silence. Yes? Otherwise, if he saw something that he didn't like it, that he thought it's wrong, him being a lawgiver, a legislator, yes, he would say this is wrong. His silence denotes that his approval. Yes? So, approvals of the Prophet ﷺ, whether that is verbal approvals or by silence, his doings and his statements, they are all are part of the legislation. Sunnah is a source of legislation. The Sunnah is a source from which legal injunctions are derived. The Quran, Ijma, and reason have all indicated that Sunnah is a legal proof. Now we will back the fact that Sunnah is a legal proof from the Quran, from the Sunnah, from Ijma, from Ijma as well. We find the noble Quran, in the glorious Quran, we find that the basis of what the Prophet ﷺ uttered in terms of legislation was in itself a revelation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. Now, he does not speak out of his desire when he is legislating. Yes, it is but revelation revealed to him. There are two types of revelation. One is the revelation which is recited, that is the word of Allah. The other revelation is the words of the Prophet ﷺ, still, yes, having that legal impact as well. Yes? So there is what we call wahi matlub and ghair matlub. It is a revelation not recited, the words of the Prophet ﷺ is a revelation, not recited. Both the Quran and Sunnah are revelation from Allah. However, the Sunnah is a revelation from Allah in meaning, not in word. Quran is a revelation from Allah in word and meaning, meaning Allah spoke it. The Quran is what? The spoken word of Allah, and also both in word and meaning. And the Sunnah is the meaning of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended for the Prophet ﷺ to say. Yeah? The Prophet ﷺ through the Sunnah has been given the task of to clarify the Quranic injunctions which have been mentioned therein in brief. We find that Quran sometimes has mentioned few things in brief. Yes? Give zakat. It did not go into details how to give zakat. Pray salah. Establish salah. It didn't go. You need sunnah. If anybody says, no, we don't need sunnah, then he is talking rubbish, because of the fact that without sunnah you are not able to perform salah. Give zakat. Yes. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ. I sometimes think, when people say, oh, no, Quran is enough for us, we don't need the Sunnah. Those who have the Quranist thought. Yeah? The Quran is enough, the Sunnah is enough. Okay, then you say, okay, how do you explain, the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, yes, that, you can eat and drink until the white thread becomes clear from the black thread. Yes? So what does that mean? They will translate it as the threads of, the phenomenon that happens in the sky. Yes? They will not translate it literally. Why? You ask them, why aren't you translating it literally? Obviously, they are getting it from the Sunnah, the meaning. So you cannot divorce yourself from the Sunnah. There's no way. For Salah, if you divorce from the Sunnah, how will you pray Salah? It's through Sunnah that we've come to know. Yes? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we sent down the reminder, the Quran to you, so that you explain to the people what has been revealed for them. Hence the prophetic clarification will be supplementary to the Quran. It's there as a supplementary. And necessary to expound the legal injunctions and to know what is legally required. Therefore the Sunnah will be a proof amongst the proofs of injunctions. That's the second reason. Yes? Backed by the Quran. The third, many textual evidences in the Quran definitely and decisively indicate the obligation of following the Sunnah. And that is a source of legislation. There are many texts in the Quran indicating that you should follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The Quran uses different styles to convey the importance of obeying the Prophet ﷺ and makes his obedience part of the obedience of Allah. Yes? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, one who obeys Rasulullah, he is obeyed Allah. Yes? So, it instructs the believers to revert a disputed matter to the Quran and Sunnah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when you have a dispute, go back to Allah and His Messenger. So, when you're going back to the Messenger, you're going to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes? And it also commands to adhere to what the Prophet ﷺ instructs to do and warns of punishing those who oppose the Prophet ﷺ. Hence, the Sunnah is being backed by the Quran. If you open page 14, yeah, wa alaikum salam. Brother has to go somewhere. The consensus, the ijma of the Muslims, yes, has been formed since the Prophet ﷺ till the present day. On the importance of adhering to the injunctions that have appeared in the prophetic Sunnah, the need to referring to it in understanding the injunctions, and on the necessity of acting upon its requirement. We find that the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ from day one, even those people, even those sects, that misguided themselves in the early stages of Islam. Yes, the Qadariya, the Mu'tazila, yes, all these, they still attached importance to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Obviously, they would misuse it for their own purpose, yes? But they did not divorce themselves from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Therefore, there is that ijma, consensus on the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, on acting upon the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The companions did not distinguish between acting upon the injunctions mentioned in the Quran and those mentioned in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Both were obligatory to follow, as they both originated from a single source, and that is the divine revelation. There are many incidents showing their consensus on the Sunnah as being a legal proof. So we find the companions of the Prophet ﷺ attached very strong emphasis and importance on the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, using the reasoning, using the human intellect to try to understand the importance of the Sunnah as a legal basis, a plausible line of reasoning is the fact that it has been decisively established that Muhammad ﷺ is the messenger of Allah. Yes? And the role of a messenger is to convey the whole message. Yes? When it says about Salah, the companions will ask the Prophet ﷺ, what do you mean by Salah? Yes? Could you show what the Salah is? The Prophet ﷺ said, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Yes? So the part of the Prophet ﷺ's role is to convey the message fully, completely. Yes? The words of Allah Ta'ala with the meanings, the words of Allah, the meanings of it, yes? His utterances and pronounces that reflect the meanings that Allah has revealed to him is the Sunnah. The requirement for believing in his messengership entails his obedience and accepting his injunction. The messengership, it doesn't mean that, the fact that you believe that he's the messenger of Allah is not, you cannot turn to, na'udhu billah, nobody can turn to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and say, what you told me, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in fact instructs a companion. You have to do that. It's not in the Quran. Will somebody say to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, na'udhu billah? Well, O Messenger of Allah, this is not in the Quran, so I will not act upon it. I don't want to listen to you, I will not obey. Are we understanding? Yeah? So there you have whatever the Prophet ﷺ, it is part or parcel, and that is what Allah says in the Quran, وَمَا أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ. Whatever the Messenger of Allah gives you, take it, and whatever he prohibits from doing it, refrain from it. Yes? So there's that extension. Yes? From the Quran there's more extension of legislation that is being given to the Prophet ﷺ to legislate. Yes? So the requirement for believing in the messenger of the Prophet ﷺ also entails, yes, his obedience to obey the Prophet ﷺ and accepting his injunctions. Otherwise, faith in a messenger has no meaning. Neither the obedience of Allah Ta'ala and acceptance of his divine commands can be envisaged whilst opposing his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he says to do something, someone cannot turn around and say, well, I'm not going to do that. Yes, I will only do what is in the Quran. It is completely, yes. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was also a lawgiver. Yes, was what? A lawgiver, legislator. Question: is it everything that came from the Prophet ﷺ a legal injunction? There are things that the Prophet ﷺ sometimes did as a joke. Yes? So is it everything that comes from the Prophet ﷺ does it have a legal impact or not? That needs to be followed. Is it everything that was issued from the Prophet ﷺ a matter of legislation? So it's important to mention different kinds of sunnah. Okay, there are different kinds of sunnah. Not all the sunnah have a legal. They're not used legally. Yes, some sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, some types of sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ are not a legislation. Yes, but inshallah we'll look at that whilst we go. But first, let's look at the different sunnahs of the Prophet ﷺ in terms of his actions and statements. The first one is sunnah qawliya. It is used to, the word sunnah qawliya is used to denote the statements of the Prophet ﷺ which he made at different circumstances for various purposes. Usually the word hadith is used to describe this kind of sunnah. Whenever we hear the word hadith, the hadith in itself means the statement of the Prophet ﷺ. Sunnah has a more general meaning. Hadith has a more restrictive meaning. Yes? So, when we say Sunnah Qawliya, in reality we mean the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Thus, when the word hadith is used, the mind rushes to conclude that it means the Sunnah Qawliya. Hence, in that respect, it is synonym to hadith. When we say Sunnah Qawliya, we are, in other words, saying hadith. They mean the same. Thus, the latter will be specific to the generality of Sunnah. In other words, Sunnah is far vast. Yes? It's Sunnah Failiya, Qawliya, Taqreeriya. Yes? Whereas the word hadith in itself, it is the statements of the Prophet ﷺ. However, sometimes hadith is used interchangeably in the meaning of Sunnah as well. That's another thing to remember, right? Yes? So, in some circles, hadith is only for the statements of the Prophet ﷺ. So, equals, hadith in that respect equals to Sunnah Qawliya. Yeah? Verbal Sunnah. Is that? Qawliya means verbal Sunnah. And Sunnah has a more larger picture. It means it can be verbal Sunnah, it can be practical Sunnah, it can be also affirmative Sunnah. But then in other circles, hadith is synonymous to Sunnah as a whole as well. Remember that. However, there are some scholars who broaden the definition of hadith. That's what I'm saying, right? By stating that it is the statement, practice and affirmation of the Prophet ﷺ. So in that respect, what will happen? In that respect, hadith will be synonymous, yeah, to the general meaning of Sunnah. Is that okay? The compendium of the Sunnah Qawliya is vast, which can be found in the books of hadith. If we look at the Sunnah Qawliya, it is a very large treasure. Yes? You're talking about thousands of hadiths of the Prophet. And the Prophet lived for 23 years. Imagine, within 1 or 2 years, a person tweets, yes, thousands of messages. Within, yeah? Whatever comes in his mind, he ends up tweeting how many times? 3-4 times a day. Yeah? If he's doing 3-4 times a day, 365 a day, how many messages would that be? More than 1,000. True. The Prophet ﷺ stayed with the companions after Dhuhr. He sat down, spoke to them. After Asr, spoke to them. Yes? Yes? After Maghrib, spoke to them. Different types. Yeah? Khutbah comes. Yes? Jummah. He spoke. Yes? So, would you say, no, how on earth there is so many thousands of hadiths? Obviously, the companions memorized the words of the Prophet ﷺ. That is the reason why you have so many hadiths, right? How can you, those who, want to float, they want to falter, yeah? Or they want to hamper themselves in accepting all the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Sometimes they wander. Today, the answer is very simple. He's got a Twitter account, he's got a WhatsApp account, he's got a Facebook account. He's already written few messages on WhatsApp, right? Today, you're talking about 5-10 messages, 10 messages on WhatsApp. Yes? Different messages. Obviously, small pieces, yeah? Few sentences, yeah? Only 1-2 sentences. Twitter, yeah? How many words it takes? 200, is it? How many? Characters, 150.
Now it's more.
Yeah, 150. So you've got that. Then Facebook. So by the time, the whole day you're talking about, you would say about 20 messages a person can do that. It's possible for a prolific, yeah? You times that with 365 days, how much would that be? Yeah? That's for a normal person, and he is the messenger of Allah who is talking to the companions, who is giving khutbah, and yes, who's talking in Ramadan, talking on occasions, talking on Hajj, talking during Ramadan, talking during khutbah. Yes, so obviously all this stuff, yeah, adds up. Talking them in circles when they are having circles. Yeah. So it is worth noting that the prophetic statements are a source of legislation only when they are used to expound and explain the injunctions or legislate them. Yes? Did you get it? If the Prophet ﷺ ends up talking about what will happen near the time of Qiyamah, yes, as a sign of Qiyamah, or he talks about the people before, yes, or he talks about Jannah, are they of a legislative nature? No. Those sunnah do not have a legal impact. Yes. When the Prophet ﷺ talks to explain what zakat is, then that sunnah will be what? Of a legal meaning. Also, when he legislates himself as well, then it will be of a legal meaning. Otherwise, not all the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, not all the sunnah is of a legal nature or legislative nature. Hence, those prophetic statements which are worldly and have no relationship with legislation, nor are they based on revelation, nor they are based on revelation, meaning that they are not based on revelation, then they are not a proof amongst the proofs of injunction. Neither are they a source used to derive legal proofs, nor it is obligatory to follow them. Yes, when the Prophet ﷺ might end up saying something about health, or sometimes he might say, yes, the Prophet ﷺ ends up saying something that does not have a legal impact, yes, then it is not, yes. When the Prophet ﷺ saw the companions hand pollinating the trees, you know hand pollination? When you take two trees and you try to hand pollinate it, because you know you've got the female and male, yes, so you try to do that so that you get more fruits, huh? Because pollination happens through wind, isn't it? Wind blows, yes, and that the whole pollination happens, yes, and then you get the flowers turning into fruits and so on. So some companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they would use their hands to try to hand pollinate, right? So with that, what happens is that they get more. So the Prophet ﷺ, he advised that it might be better if they did not do that and allow the natural pollination to take its course. The Prophet ﷺ said that, look, at the end of the day, whatever Allah has written for you, you will get it. Why should you be doing that using your hand? Yes? So they gave up doing it. So what happened? The companions, they did not do it. Yes? When he passed by the trees, he found that there was a decline in the yield. The Prophet ﷺ saw that the amount of production was less. Yes? So he allowed them to pollinate, stating that you know your worldly affairs better. The Prophet ﷺ said that, look, this is more of a worldly affair and it's your expertise, so do what you are doing it. But in other words, can you see, it looks like it's not a legislation, but it is a legislation. Do you understand me? When he said no to the companions refrained. Yes? Yes? Because of the fact that it could be from Allah Ta'ala, not the opinion of the Prophet. Yes? If it is own personal opinion. Yeah. Do you understand me? Then it doesn't have a legal impact on worldly affairs. Can you understand? So, but the companions could understand that it could be from Allah Ta'ala. That's why the Prophet ﷺ is saying. Then the Prophet ﷺ changed and he said, no, keep on doing it. Yes? Because you see that there are benefits. And the Prophet ﷺ said, these are things of your expertise. Yes? You're more experts about it. So, keep on doing it. Sunnah fi'aliyah. It is those acts that the Prophet ﷺ did such as his way and procedure, and procedure of praying, his judicial decision based on one witness and the oath of the claimant and so on. These are examples. Again, some of his actions are a source of legislation while others are not. Remember, even the actions of the Prophet ﷺ, not all actions, they fall into the category of being a legislation. only a few of them. Let's try to piece them. Let's try to divide them into different types. The first one is his dispositional acts, al-af'al al-jibiliya. These are dispositional acts. You know, everyone has got his own ways of doing things. Is that true? Yeah. And it's a natural instincts that people have inside themselves. Yes. These are those acts that emanated from the Prophet ﷺ as part of his natural habits in his capacity as a human being, such as eating, drinking, walking, sitting, and so on. There was a way of the way the Prophet ﷺ used to walk. That does not have a legal impact that all the Muslims should try to walk that way. Yes? Do you understand? Although it was one of the beautiful ways of walking. Yes? But does not have a legal impact. Otherwise, it would be hard for us to do. Yes? His way of drinking, and all these things. This kind does not enter into the arena of legislation apart from the fact that it can be considered as a permissible act for the legally capable, and it could be praiseworthy as well. If you do the way the Prophet ﷺ ate, yes, that is praiseworthy for you. Hence, it is not obligatory to follow him in this regard, although some of the companions like Ibn Umar were eager to follow him in this regard. You know what Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu would do? Once the Prophet ﷺ left Mecca and he was going back to Medina Munawwara, yes, at one place the Prophet ﷺ halted to answer the call of nature. Now Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu would follow the Prophet ﷺ to every deed. So imagine Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he followed the Prophet ﷺ all the way. And thus, obviously the companions would follow him, yes, and also those other followers who came after the companions, they would follow Ibn Umar because they would learn Hajj from him as well. And on his way back, right, on his way back to Medina, he halted in the same place where the Prophet ﷺ halted, Ibn Umar, and he went there, though he doesn't feel like it, answering the call of nature, he went to do that as well. So imagine that strict following of Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala. It's so important. Yes, you do not have a call of nature at that place. Yes, but he would try to emulate the Prophet ﷺ to every single word. Thus, to follow him in this area here we are not talking about the call of nature, but say for example in the habits of the Prophet ﷺ, in the habits, yes, in Sunnah, in af'al jibiliya, yes. If you try to follow the Prophet ﷺ in those things, like for example the way the Prophet ﷺ ate using these three fingers, yes, the way the Prophet ﷺ, he licked he cleaned the plate fully, yes. If you try to follow the Prophet ﷺ in those aspects, it's a good thing, yes. His personal experiences concerning worldly affairs also enter within its remit, such as organizing army, military strategy, business matters, and so on. These actions are not considered as legislated matters; rather, they are based on one's personal experience, and so not on the revelation. Like for example, what happened was that the Prophet ﷺ was also a military strategist, right? In Badr, what happened was that the Prophet ﷺ encamped the Muslim army on a hill. So a companion of the Prophet ﷺ said, "O Messenger of Allah, have you encamped us here because it's the revelation of Allah? Yes? Or you have done it because it's part of your military strategy?" Did you get it? Part of your opinion. Yes? Your military strategy. The Prophet ﷺ said, "It's my opinion. My military opinion. Military strategy." The Prophet ﷺ, the person said, "Therefore, I can advise you something better." Yes? He said, if you want to achieve strategic advantage, then the whales of Badr, you take control of them. Yes? Not by being on a hill, you will have a strategic advantage. The greatest strategic advantage, obviously on a hill, you have a strategic advantage because the enemy is below and you are from the above, you're throwing arrows and whatever. Yes? So, this is the reason sometimes they try to secure hills and so on and so forth. But he said that the best advantage for you would be to hold the wells, and in a hot environment, yes, water is needed. Camels, horses, not only this, when the soldiers of the enemy, they want to come to the water, they do not have access. Yes? So it destroys their morale completely. So the Prophet ﷺ heeded to his opinion. So that is what it's being mentioned here. Neither did the Prophet ﷺ legally impose them on others, nor did he consider them as part of his legislated issues. Like, for example, his maneuvers, right, in battlefields, he did not impose on anyone. Hence, when he commanded, yes, if somebody studies that and something else on military, man, he wants to study, that's something else, yes, for an insight, but it's not a legally binding thing. Hence, when he commanded the companions to entrench at a higher ground prior to the Battle of Badr, a companion asked whether that was part of his military strategy or a revelation that he followed. He replied that that was part of his military planning. Thus the companion advised him that if he wanted a strategic advantage, then the best area to encamp and entrench at was at the well. Yes, this kind also includes the individual judicial decisions he made based on the arguments presented to him. Like, for example, sometimes people do come to the Prophet ﷺ and they give their own narrative of the problems that they have. Then the Prophet ﷺ makes a decision based on that. Yes? So he's listening from both of them, he's taking their evidences. Yes? Now the decision that the Prophet ﷺ is making at that moment in time, yes, is not binding for some other judge who will come later on to try to take decision, because sometimes he might find, yes, that the other person has more truth than this person. Is that clear? Yes. However, the procedure and processes that he used to arrive at those decisions are part of legislation. Yes, we will look at the process. How did the Prophet ﷺ arrive at that decision? Yeah, we can study that. And that is also part of legislation. Yes. But the decision that has already been done, you cannot take that and try to replicate in everything. Otherwise, you could make a wrong decision. Yes? Is that clear? Those acts that are particular to him alone, in which no other member of his ummah shares them with him, such as his specificity with the continuous fasting. Like, for example, the Prophet ﷺ would continuously fast. Like we do iftar. It is important for us to do what? Iftar. There's something called Sawmul Wisal. That is, the Prophet ﷺ would fast today until Maghrib. He would not break the fast. And he will carry on until the next day. And he would go on. This is because Allah would provide the Prophet ﷺ with food in his dream, in his sleeping. Because when he's sleeping, it's not really sleeping the way we are sleeping. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, I'm not like you. Yes? The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا يُطْعِمُنِ اللَّهُ وَيَسْقِينِ. Allah is the one who feeds me, and also he's the one who gives me water to drink. Meaning that in his state, when he is not in the same state as, yes, waking up with the people, Allah is providing him with these things. So the Prophet ﷺ said that, look, do not try to emulate by trying to carry on with fasts for days, right? I can do that, but not you. Yes. So that in itself is specific to the Prophet ﷺ. Somebody says, oh, this is the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, I will try to do it. He should get a slap on the wrist. Yeah. Okay. And his marriage to more than 4 wives and so on, that is specific to the Prophet ﷺ. These issues are specific to the Prophet ﷺ, in which no other person is included. Therefore, it is incorrect to follow him in these specific things, yes, because the proof is well established for all others apart from him to marry no more than 4 wives at one given time, and proof of prohibition of performing some al-wisal is also established in relation to others beside him. The practice of the Prophet ﷺ, the prophetic practices that have been known as being clarifications to the briefly mentioned injunctions in the Quran, indeed, they will enjoy legislative authority. Yes? So, like for example, I said about zakat, it needs clarification, so that whatever the Prophet ﷺ would say about that zakat, yes, and he will expound on it, yes, that will enjoy legislative authority, meaning that it will have a legal impact. The legal injunctions will be established through them. Moreover, their status in terms of their being injunctions will be the same as the status of the textually evidenced acts that need clarification. So, in that respect, the prophetic act will be, we are talking about acts. Do you understand me? Like for example, the Prophet ﷺ, we are not talking about statements. Like for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet ﷺ, Allah tells the believers, Aqimus salah, establish salah. Yes? Now, how do you establish the salah? That's the main thing. The main question is what? How do you establish salah? So the acts of the Prophet ﷺ said that, look, the way I will do the salah, these acts that I will do regarding salah, that is what you're meant to do. Yes? So these acts of the Prophet ﷺ, they're sunnah. They're what? What type of sunnah? Fa'liya, practical sunnah. And they're clarifying the commandment of Allah. Are you understanding? Yes? So they will enjoy what? Legislative authority. Yes? So in that respect, a prophetic act will be classed as a clarification of a briefly mentioned Quranic injunction, following verbal or circumstantial indicia. Yeah? Meaning, or evidences. The example for the former, which follows a verbal indicium, is his verbal command explaining a briefly mentioned injunction, such as Sallu such as the Prophet ﷺ stating, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni yusalli. Allah Ta'ala says that establish salah. Now the Prophet ﷺ is what? He's clarifying, he's saying that pray the way I've performed my prayers, as it is in Bukhari. Right? Let's move on, inshallah, to page 16. Another example of the Sunnah Failiyah acts. Sunnah Failiyah acts. Another example where a Sunnah Failiyah acts as a clarification of a briefly mentioned Quranic injunction with a previously preceded verbal indicium is as follows. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, indicium means what? Indication. Okay. Allah briefly commands to perform Hajj in the following verse. Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. So Allah is indicating that people must do Hajj if they are able to do so. Allah says, as a right of Allah, it is obligatory on the people to perform Hajj of the house on everyone who has the ability to manage his way to it. Then this follows with a verbal indicium where the Prophet ﷺ says, لِتَأْخُذُوا مَنَاسِكَكُمْ. Yes? Acquire, لِتَأْخُذُوا مِنِّي مَنَاسِكَكُمْ. Acquire from me your rituals. Yes? In Sunnah. Thereafter, his Sunnah Failiyah demonstrated how the Hajj should be performed. So what we have find is that there are two indicants. Yeah? There are how many indicants? Two. One is the Quranic indicant, where Allah tells that you have to do Hajj. Then the second is the Sunnah indicant, which is verbal Sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ also says that, look, learn from me practically. Yes. Now all the practices of the Prophet ﷺ in Hajj, yes, they will be what? Sunnah fi'liyah. And they will have a legal impact. Yes, we have to do it that way. So we have a brief Quranic injunction. We said about Hajj. Then we have got also verbal indication, indicium from the Prophet ﷺ. Then we have got the practical Sunnah. And this practical Sunnah is what doing? Clarifying the Quranic injunction, and it will have a legal impact. Yes. The example of the latter, where a prophetic act will be classed as a clarification of a briefly mentioned Quranic injunction following a circumstantial indicium, is that of wuzu. Like for example, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا قَمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. Allah says, O you who believe, when you rise for salat, prayer, wash your faces and your hands up to the elbows, and wipe hands on your hands, and wash your feet up to the ankles. Then the circumstantial indicium follows, allows the companions to watch him how the wudu is. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying you have to do wudu in the Quran. Yes? Now a companion will say, oh, how can I do wudu? The Prophet ﷺ is doing wudu. They say, oh, that's how the Prophet ﷺ is doing wudu. Let's do it the way the Prophet ﷺ is doing wudu. Let's do the way the Prophet ﷺ is doing wudu. So what's happening now is that act of the Prophet ﷺ, the circumstantial, yes, indication is there, and it drives people to try to follow the Prophet ﷺ without any verbal statement from the Prophet ﷺ as well. Yes, the Prophet ﷺ practically did initially, and his legislative knowledge was acknowledged as either being obligatory, desirable, or so on. What the Prophet ﷺ practically did initially, and its legislative nature was acknowledged as either being obligatory, desirable, and so on. This practice then imposes on the legally competent servants. That is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرَ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. There are some acts that the Prophet ﷺ did, right, with a legislative act, acknowledgement. They could be either obligatory for us to do, or it could be what the Prophet ﷺ did, or it could be desirable, and so on. What the Prophet ﷺ practically did, however, its legislative nature was not acknowledged. Nonetheless, the act was done to achieve nearness to Allah, such as his doing of some acts of worship on ad hoc basis. Then that act will be considered as legally desirable. However, if that act was done without the intention of achieving nearness to Allah, then that act will be legally permissible, such as his practice in buying and selling. Okay, what we have is three things. In D, we are talking something that the Prophet ﷺ did continuously. Yeah? Continuously. So it will have a legal impact. It could be either obligatory. Like for example, a companion says, I've always seen the Prophet ﷺ doing so many rakats before Dhuhr or before Asr. Yes? Yes? I've never seen the Prophet ﷺ, or Aisha radiallahu ta'ala says that the Prophet ﷺ always did this act. Yes? So it will be what? Sunnah muakkada. Because of the continuous act or continuous deed of the Prophet ﷺ. Yes? Or it could be desirable as well. Then in the E, can you see? In E, what happens is that Prophet ﷺ did it, but its legislative nature was not acknowledged. In the first one, the Prophet ﷺ may have said the companions, you also do it. Yes? In the second one, the Prophet ﷺ did not say it, right? Right? And he did to achieve the nearness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he did not even do it continuously. He did it on ad hoc basis. Then obviously that act will be legally desirable. Yes? It will be mustahab. Yes? And if the act was done without the nearness, without achieving the nearness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be permissible, like buying and selling, yes, and how he did it, yes. Affirmative sunnah, taqririya, right? It denotes a silence, the silence of the Prophet ﷺ concerning a statement or an act done in his presence or in his absence, yet he is aware of it, but remains silent about it. Right? What happens is that a companion does in front of the Prophet ﷺ, or does not do in front of him, he did somewhere else, and the Prophet ﷺ came to know that he did it, and the Prophet ﷺ remained quiet, or even he might have said, yes, that's well done. Yes? So that's affirmation from the Prophet ﷺ. It's known as sunnah taqririya. This silence of his proves the permissibility of that statement or act. And it's not only the act, statement as well. If somebody said a dua, like for example, and the Prophet ﷺ remained quiet about it, yes, that dua, we should do it. Yeah, it's permissible, yeah, to do. And if the Prophet ﷺ endorsed it, yes, then it's desirable to do, yes, has a legal impact. The silence also has a legal impact if the Prophet ﷺ is aware of it, and also if the Prophet ﷺ endorses it, it has a stronger legal impact. It becomes desirable. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Is the mustahab has a legal impact?
Yeah, mustahab is you know, all these are divisions. You know, it is legally, yeah, has legal impact. Mustahab, even when we say that this is permissible, it is a legal wording. Yes? When we say it's permissible, it means that it's permissible to do. So it has a legal impact. Now I think I'll manage it now, inshallah. This silence of his proves the permissibility of this because the Prophet ﷺ does not remain quiet over an evil act of falsehood. If it was wrong, the Prophet ﷺ would oppose it, yes, and protest it. The following enters within the realm of his sunnah. His silence when some African men were playing with shields and spears inside the mosque on the day of Eid, as well as his silence when some Ansari girls sang on Eid. Now on Eid day, obviously, you know, things are where people are happy and they do things, yes. So some African men inside the mosque, they were, you know, they were practicing with spears and they were dancing with that. The Prophet ﷺ did not say anything about it. So, obviously, on the day of Eid, if things are a bit downgraded, they're fine, yeah? They can be tolerated, yes? They can be what? Tolerated, permissible, yeah? And also the Ansari girls singing, yeah, little girls singing on Eid, yes? Fine, yes. Other prophetic reactions besides his silence also point towards his affirmation, thus becoming part of his sunnah taqririya, such as his happiness, his rejoice over an act, his delight concerning it, and appreciation of it. Like for example, if he saw somebody doing something and he smiled at it, yes, that's affirmation, isn't it? It's confirming it. In fact, such reactions have a stronger degree of prophetic affirmation and acceptance because of their external exhibition compared to his silence over an act instead. Look, if the Prophet ﷺ remains silent on an act and he did not protest, it's permissible. Yeah. If he showed his smile, yeah, it's permissible but praiseworthy as well. Yeah. It has a stronger, yeah, statement, isn't it? It makes a stronger what? Highlight. It highlights more strongly. Like somebody did an act, right? And you remain quiet about it, means that you're happy with it, yeah? Let's take an example of a boss, yeah? In a company. So the worker thinks that let me do something that he's not told me to do, huh? What he wants to do, something that he's not done, yeah? Told me to do, and hopefully he will be happy, yeah? So he ends up doing something, he comes up with a good idea and he does it, right? Yeah? And he thinks, okay, I'll put the notice there, yeah? Health and safety notice here and there, yes? And he doesn't say anything. He just remains quiet, the boss, yes? It's his affirmation, isn't it? The boss has affirmed. Otherwise he would, who's this putting all these notices everywhere? Yeah? Pull them out. That's what they do, isn't it? So, but he happens to see his boss looking at the notices, wow, yeah, or some rules, yeah, how to use this, yeah, how to use this machinery, yeah. So there wasn't anything written and he's put it there, yeah. So how to operate this forklift, yeah, or health and safety, instructions. And the boss comes and looks at it and he's smiling and he looks at it. It has a more stronger impact, isn't it, than him remaining silent. True? Yeah? It is worthy to note that his silence over an act or statement does not always indicate that it is permissible, but sometimes it can point out that the act is obligatory or desirable due to a supplementary proof. Remaining quiet. A companion might say, oh, I did this in front of the Prophet, he remained quiet. It could be permissible. Say, for example, another statement comes out, resurfaces in front of us, that says, no, the Prophet ﷺ did say that. Yeah? So what happens? Yes? So don't jump into conclusion very quickly. Say a companion says, right, I did this act in front of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ did not say anything about it. Yeah? But somewhere we find the Prophet ﷺ did emphasize on it. Yeah? The companion might not have known about it. Yeah? Yeah? Then what happens is that now you will not say that it's permissible, you will say it's desirable, because the Prophet ﷺ has talked about it. Yes? So sometimes we don't jump quickly into conclusion, we have to try to look for any other evidences where the Prophet ﷺ has spoken about it. Then we've got the types of sunnah in relations to transmission. Yes? Sunnah in terms of their multiple chains and channels of narration to us, according to the Ahnaf, is divided into three kinds. According to the Hanafis, they divide in terms of transmission, they divide sunnah into how many kinds? Three. Sunnah mutawatira, sunnah mashhura, and sunnah al-ahad. Yes? Sunnah ahad. While according to Jumhur, the majority of scholars apart from the Hanafis, Ahnaf, it is divided into only two kinds. Sunnah mutawatira or ahad. So you can see the Hanafis, they go one step ahead and they put one extra classification. Mashhura. Yes? What they mean we'll explore later. As for the Jumhur, they envisage Sunnah Mashhura as a sub-kind of Sunnah Ahad. Have you seen? Yes? The Jumhur, they do not really subtract Sunnah Mashhura. Mashhura means something which is popular. Yes? Mutawatir means something which is continuous en masse. Yes? En masse transmission. And en masse meaning a big crowd of transmitting it throughout the generations, continuously. Yeah? That is mutawatira. Yes? Yeah? Like Salah, you're talking about, it's also Sunnah mutawatira because all the companions used to do it. Yes? So it's not a mass transmission. Yes? Mashhura is something which is popular, meaning that a lot of companions did speak about it. Yes? And ahad is, these are singular transmission, meaning that not all of them, yes, or maybe quite a good number did transmit in the beginning, but later on it just streamlined, yes, into only a few narrators. Or in the beginning it was transmitted by only a few companions, but then later on it mushroomed into many narrators. Yes, still the sunnah will be classed as ahad. Yes, singular. Ahad means ahad. Can you say ahad? One. Singular narrations. Yes, is that clear? So the difference between Hanafis and the Jumhur is the Hanafis, they have divided the Sunnah in terms of transmission, to three kinds. The Jumhur, they have divided into only two kinds. So you ask them that, where does Mashhur fit in? They say, no, Mashhur is a sub-kind of what? Ahad. Yes? Is that clear? While the Ahnaf considered as an independent kind among the three kinds mentioned above. Sunnah mutawatira, it is a narration which is transmitted by a large number of, we are talking about Sunnah in terms of transmission, right? Yeah? Not in terms of the kind, yeah? In terms of transmission. So it is a narration which is transmitted by a large number of people whose intentional or unintentional agreement on lying is completely impossible. Yes? So you're talking about so many companions transmitting it. Yes? And they're transmitting, and those who come later on in generations, they're also transmitted. There's no way you can say, oh, this crowd from the beginning, they have all said, oh, let's lie. Na'udhu billah on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's impossible. Yes, it's impossible. They will be caught, isn't it? Yes? Yes?
Yes.
It's a large crowd, it's impossible for it, right? Yes? Mainstream, something becomes mainstream, a big crowd saying it, yes? It's impossible. But if you get these, you get these unknown personalities, yes, saying something, yes, and companions have not even heard about it. In fact, they will raise protest. They will say, where did you get this from? Yes? Is that clear? This large number of people remains successive and continues in each chain of narration up to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So what happens is that, say for example, from Imam Bukhari, a large number of people, they narrated, like innamal a'malu binniyat. Yes? Yes? Innamal a'malu, it's a hadith which is like a large number of companions narrated from the Prophet ﷺ. Yes? Then those after him, yes? Those after him, like that, in all the chains of narration up to, you find a very big number of people doing it. Yes, that narration could be concerning what was heard or observed from the Prophet ﷺ. This definition clarifies a few points, which are as follows: the narrators are meant to be a sizable group whose deliberate and deliberate agreement on lying is impossible. There is no any defined number of how large the crowd should be, as long as it is large enough for benefiting knowledge, by granting us the utmost authenticity, verification, and the fact that hearts hearts become content. Yes, with that report and its reporters, that contentment and satisfaction is attained not only by, it should be by the sheer number of reporters, but also by the righteousness and religiosity. You find it's not only a big crowd reporting, but you're finding that this all crowd is pious as well. It's religious. It's not those who you can say, oh, they lie. They are people who are very pious people, right? And you're talking a big crowd. Yes. Yes, if they are irreligious, at least you can have a bit. Yes, you feel content at the end. You say, well, it's come from a big crowd. I am, alhamdulillah, satisfied by that report. That is Sunnah Mutawatira. B. All narration should be of the same description as mentioned above in every layer or chain of narration. It's not that only the companions to be of that character and quality. All the narrators should be of the same category as well in their piety and religiosity. The knowledge acquired by the narration is either by listening or observation. Either they've listened from the Prophet ﷺ or they observed him doing something. When all the conditions of being mutawatir are made for the narration, then that contributes to certitude and benefits a certain knowledge which is impossible to refute. Yes, so it becomes what? A certain knowledge. We say this is it is 100%. Yes, it's not a supposition. Yes, it's not a presumption. Yes, it's not an assumption. What they've come is from the Prophet ﷺ. They've seen. Yes, yes, they have observed. It's exactly what the Prophet ﷺ did. Yes, and there cannot be even a dent of lie in there. Yes, so it's a certain, and it is impossible to refute. You can't refute. Because what is established as mutawatir is just as what is established as mutawatir is just as an incident witnessed by one's eyes. Sorry, I didn't have time to edit it, right? I was in London on Wednesday the whole day, and came back on Thursday. It was like I had to send it quickly to the printers, right? Yeah. So it is like as if it is like as if you've seen something. A report that comes with a large crowd of religious people, pious people, is just like, yes, you say, oh, I wasn't there in the incident. Yeah, I wasn't there in the incident. You say that, yeah. Somebody says, oh, you weren't there. Your dad was there, your uncle was there. Yes? Huh? Go and ask them. And not your uncle and dad, your nephew was there, your son was there. Huh? And say, oh, these are people who I trust. Yeah? And not only that, the Imam of the mosque was there as well. And you see, Imam is very pious man as well, right? Not like someone else. Sorry. Yes? And not only this, who else was there? Oh, you're saying also, your granddad was there. And your granny was there. Go and ask them. Yes? Yes? So you'll say, okay, whatever they said is so in that incident. Yeah? Oh, they saw your son slapping my son. Huh? They saw what? Your son slapping my son. Now what will he do? Yeah? Sometimes when they say, oh, your son has slapped my son, he says, because he thinks, dad always thinks what? He is pious. Yes? In front of the dad is what? He's always acting like goody, goody, goody. Yes? Righteous man. But there you don't know, he could be mischievous, right? So, when the man comes and says that, look, your son has slapped what? My son. He says, no, wait. I can't believe that. That is not his trait. That is not his behavior. He says, but do you, you don't believe me. I do believe you, but that could be that you've not seen properly, or I do believe you, but I can't understand the fact that I can't believe him doing that. Yeah. In other words, he wants to say that he is. I've never seen him. Yeah, and sometimes obviously there is some subjectivity in it, right? And the fact is that there is also the fact that he pretends in front of the father to be good. Yeah. There is mischievous in front of others, right? So the man says, well, your dad was there, he saw it. Phone him now. Yes? He says, oh, my dad is never nice. Your granddad was there as well, and he saw it. Oh, granddad is, your granny was there. Oh, granny, she can't be wrong. Yes, if she sinned, yes, even with her old age and not being able to see properly things, and if she's seen as well, yes, she was nodding like this. She said, oh, look. I'll say, oh, then what, he will apologize then, yeah? Yes, when he brings all these people in front of him, yes? Yes? It's becoming mutawatir, huh? It's becoming what? Mutawatir, huh? Is that making a sense, yeah? Yes. Then what happens is that because what is established as mutawatir, right? Now, based on that, a mutawatir narration is what? Definite in terms of its authenticity and reportage from the Prophet ﷺ. Hence, a mutawatir narration will be a proof amongst the proofs of injunction, a source of legislation, a fact which the Muslims agree upon. And what will happen? It will have a more strong emphasis on doing it, yes? Because it's mutawatir, yes. The types of sunnah mutawatira. Sunnah mutawatira divides into two types: qawliya, verbal, and fi'liya, practical. Yeah. So what we are doing now, the true transmission of mutawatir can be of two types. Yes. The former is small. The former is small in number, meaning that when we look at the compendium of the sunnah, when we look at the body of all the sunnah, we find that the first type, meaning the verbal, the verbal sunnah being mutawatir, is very small. But sunnah fi'liya, the practical sunnah, it is vast, plentiful. Therefore, sunnah mutawatira qawliya subdivides into two kinds: lafzi, literal, and manawi, hermeneutical. Do we understand? Meaning that in some places what we find, the companions have narrated from the Prophet ﷺ exactly what he said. What? What for what? What? What for? What? And you're talking about 20 companions doing exactly the same wording as the word of the Prophet ﷺ. What we'll call this? Sunnah? Yeah. It's mutawatira, it's qawliya, and it is what? Lafziya. Yes? And if it is hermeneutical, meaning that the companions have narrated, yes, but it's different, meaning the wordings are different, yes?
Same meaning.
And they're all arriving at the same meaning, yes? The example of the first one, whose wording has been consistent and mutawatir, is the man kadhaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa maq'adahu min an-nar. One who lies against me, then let him reserve his place in hell. The Prophet ﷺ said, a big number of companions, they narrated exactly as they heard from the Prophet ﷺ with the same wording. Yes? So that is lafziyah. Ma'nawi, it is a narration whose meaning has enjoyed mutawatir position apart from its wording. Despite the differences in wording, all of narrations enjoy the same meaning. Yes, that's Ma'nawi. It is not conditional in Ma'nawi that all narrations will be with the same wording reach the extent of being mutawatir, right? It is no condition in Ma'nawi that all narrations with the same wording reach, meaning that in Ma'nawi, it's not a condition. Like, for example, one wording might have only 2 hadiths, another, but meaning is the same. Yes? You will find another set of hadiths, yes? The wording is different, but the meaning is the same. Yes? So, in terms of wording, yes, it's not important to be mutawatir in Ma'nawi, but meaning has to be mutawatir. Yeah? The variation of wording conveying the same meaning through different chains of narration must reach the extent of being mutawatir. The collection of all different narrations with the variation in wording, however, conveying the same meaning grants the benefit of tawatur, of being mutawatir. Yes? The meaning that different narrations with different wordings and different statements convey, for example, that actions are based on intention, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, have reached the level of tawatur. However, the individual narrations per se, granting that meaning with the different chains, have not reached that level. So we find that there are many actions are according to intentions. There are many different hadiths, but not all of them have given the same. The wordings have been a bit different, but they all of them have conveyed. Like, for example, in one hadith it's innamal amalu bin niyat. Yes, actions are according to intention. In a different hadith is what? Innamal amalu bin niyya. Actions are according to intention, not intentions. But the meaning is the same. Yes? Innamal amalu bin niyya. An action is according to its intention. Okay. Are you understanding? Yeah? So you have all different hadiths, wordings are a bit different, but the meaning is the same. Is that clear? Yes? It is that narration, mashhura, it's that narration that has a humble beginning in which very few companions initially narrated it. However, the narrators after the companions in the era of the followers, tabi'un, and thereafter multiplied enormously. So what's happened is that the beginning of Sunnah mashhura is like ahad. Yes? It's a singular narration. There's only 1, 2, 3 narrators amongst the companions. However, later on, because the tabi'un, yes, they listen from these companions, students, yeah, they're students. Say everyone has got about 20 students, yeah? They've heard the same thing. So now you've got about 60 narrators. And they have got their own students, yeah? So now you've got 100, so it's mushrooming, yeah? As it goes on, it's mushrooming in number, yes? So this is mashhura. So this is the reason why the Hanafis, what they say regarding mashhura, they say it is an independent kind. But the Jumhur, they say, no, it is a subdivision. It's what? A subdivision of ahad based on the fact that it has a humble beginning as a singular narration.
Yeah.
Yes? May Allah reward you. You're just like me, not feeling well today. It looks like. Yeah. So that lateral multiplication and an abundance of narrators negate their agreement on an error or a lie. Yes. So the fact is that the companions, we know that they are all honest. Yes. Yes, the Prophet as-sahabatu adul. Yes. So those who came after them, they, because of their sheer number, negate the fact that, they have carried or they have narrated a lie, from the companions. Yes. But it's not mutawatir. Can you see? It's a different kind altogether. So, yes. Hence, in reality, the humble beginning of a sunnah mashhura is like a had. However, it becomes popular later on. Yes, to the point of tawatur. This description clarifies that a sunnah mashhura is not qat'i. Did you see? This definition clarifies the fact that sunnah mashhura is not definite. Yes, it's what? To a degree is assumptive. Yes, in its authenticity. In its authentic relation to the Prophet ﷺ. However, it is definite in its attribution to the narrators. Yes? Based on this fact, Imam Abu Hanifa stated that it benefits a stronger assumption. What Imam Abu Hanifa says? Imam Abu Hanifa says, look, usually these are just wordings, right? But yes, when we talk about assumption, it doesn't mean that it's assumption in terms of assumption linguistically, right? In assumption, we mean something higher than that. Yes? Are you understanding? Yes? We have something which is assumptive, dhanni. Yes? It's from the Prophet ﷺ, but here assumption is being used, it's being used against definiteness. Yes? Definiteness. Definite is 100%. Yes? I'll give you an example, right? Right? We are talking about a person came and said that, oh, your son hit, my son. The same thing, same example. So, his statement, is it definite or assumptive? Right? You might think he's assumptive because, this man, is a dodgy guy. Do you understand me? I'm just you might say it might be, it's not 100%. It might be 80% or 70%. So it becomes assumptive. It is 70%, but it is, even if he's honest as well, but because you think your son is what? An angel. What do you think your son is what? An angel. Because he's always displayed as an angel in front of you. Yes? So what happens, even this person is honest and he's come with that, yes? So, you would say, well, I would not agree with him 100%, but I agree with him 70%, or even 80%, or even 90% I agree with him. Yes? That my son hit. Yes? You will go to his wife and say, my son, that man came to say to me that our son has hit. Wife will say, our son is an angel. Yes? They'll say, but that is our, shopkeeper. It's the one selling meat. Yes? Everybody knows him. He's, mashallah, very regular to the mosque. So he's like, possibly. Yes? Possibly he's hit. Yes? So what do you think? She would say, I think 80%, 70% he might be right. Yeah? And she will say to him, what do you think? To the husband. He'll say, well, I think because I see him all in the mosque, he's a very good person of good character, 80% right. Is this definite or assumptive? It is assumptive because definite means 100%. Yes? Now you get grannies, granddads, everybody who have seen as well. Yes? And he says, well, your granny, granddad, everybody saw. Yes? Maternal, paternal, grannies, granddad, they were all there. He hit on the stadium when we were watching boxing. He boxed as well. Yes, he gave a punch to my son. And everybody was there. Granny, granddads, they were all there. On each day, we were having a boxing match. Yes, everybody was sitting in the audience. Ask your granddad, granny. So now what it is? That is now definite. Yes? So it's not assumptive. Is that clear? Yeah? So what we find is that Imam, yeah, but now look, in Mashhura what's happening? In Mashhura what's happening, there is a small little beginning, humble beginning that in mushrooms. Yes? So Imam Abu Hanifa says that that benefits what? A strong assumption. What he says? A strong? He says that is about 90%. Yes? Assumption. You understand? You know, in assumption, you're not saying that he's wrong, he's lying. You understand me? You're not saying that. It's just not, it's not reaching that definite position. When we're using assumption, we are using in what? Not reaching the definite position. Yes. Otherwise, somebody might say, oh, it's not, it's assumptive, therefore I'm not going to act. Not that. Very close to certitude, yes, in Mashhura, which is known as the satisfactory knowledge. It gives you what? Satisfaction. Because in the beginning it has a humble beginning in Mashhura. Can you see? And then it grows into a number. So it gives you what? Dhann qawi. What it gives you? Dhann qawi. It gives you the benefit of a strong assumption, which grants you what? Ilmu tumanina. Yes? The knowledge of satisfaction. You're satisfied. You say yes. Yes? Now you will take an action against your son. Yeah? Yeah? Because now... in terms of its authentic attribution to the Prophet ﷺ, however, in terms of practical application and its obligatory nation, according to the Ahnaf, it is on the same level as mutawatira. Yes? In terms of attribution to the Prophet ﷺ is like that, but at the end of the day, because of being what? Mashhura, it is just like mutawatira. Do you understand me? Yes? In terms of nitty-gritties of the technicalities, are like it is like this. But when it comes to what? Practicing it, yes, it is just like Sunnah Mutawatira. Just as it is important to practice on what? Sunnah Mutawatira, it is also important to practice on Mashhura. Thus it will be a proof amongst the proofs of injunction and a legal source. Amongst this kind is the popular hadith, Innamal Amal bin Niyat, as I've mentioned, yes? Actions according to intention. It could be either Mashhura, there's a small number, then it grows into bigger number. And also the following narration is included in the same category that has been transmitted by Ibn Majah, wherein the Prophet ﷺ prohibited the combined marriage with a woman and her paternal or maternal aunt. Yes? Yes? So that is Sunnah Mashhura. It will be just like Mutawatira. That Sunnah Ahad, it is a narration that was narrated by a small... Can I just do the reading? Is that okay? Can I just do the reading? And if you have any question, is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah? I'll do the reading, and if you have any questions, it is a narration that has been narrated by a small number of people, ahad, which did not reach the level of it becoming a sunnah mutawatira. Okay, ahad is that it did not enjoy the same status as sunnah mutawatira. That is the time. That is in the time of Tabi'un and thereafter. According to the Hanafiya, yes. According to the Hanafiya, it is every narration that does not enter within the definition of Sunnah Mutawatira or Mashhura. According to the Jumhur, it gives the benefit of preponderant assumption, Dhanni Rajih. Do you understand me? Preponderant is just like you say 80%, yes? Near definite, being definite, yes? But according to the Zahiriya, yes? And some hadith scholars, I think you should say it gives you the meaning of definiteness. Okay? Yes? Should be definiteness there. In any case, it is obligatory to act upon it. Okay, whether it gives you the benefit of what? Preponderant assumption or not, acting upon it is important. The evidences pointing towards the fact that Sunnah Ahad is a proof amongst the proofs of injunction, also a source of legislation as follows. You know, these are, the scholars have used this intellectual exercises or technique in trying to what? Create a kind of classification. Yes? But in terms of acting upon it, it's important. Yeah, you can't say, oh, this is Sunnah Ahad, I'm not going to act. No. The following verse plays an evidence in this regard. Allah says, and it is not for the believers to go forth in battle at once, for there should be a separate from every division of them a group remaining to obtain understanding in the religion and warn their people when they return to them, that they might be cautious. So those people who look, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, Allah is saying that not everybody should go in the battlefield. Some people should stay with the Prophet ﷺ here to learn from the Prophet ﷺ. When those who return from the battlefield, they can learn from them. So who will be this? Only few people, isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah, the majority is in the battlefield. Yes? So, that is what? A proof of Sunnah Ahad to be practiced. Yes? Again, it is well established that the Prophet ﷺ sent chiefs, emissaries and judges and personnel to impart the knowledge. These individuals are Ahad, singular. The Prophet ﷺ said, okay, you go to this tribe, yes? Or like for example, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, he sent him to Yemen. It's only one person. But he's taking all that information from the Prophet ﷺ. So he's what? Ahad. He's a singular narration. So those people of Yemen, they will say, oh no, you're only one. We will not act upon what you're saying. No. Yes? In some places the Prophet ﷺ would send one teacher or two teachers to teach. They can't say, oh, you're not a group of 10, so we'll not take your information. No. Yes, sir. For those people, it is Sunnah Ahad, yet it is important for them to act upon. Okay? So the word division is used to denote one or more than one person. That means that a small number of people who acquire the knowledge and pass on that part of knowledge established through Khabar Wahid will be acted upon. It is well established that the Prophet ﷺ sent chiefs, emissaries, judges and personnel to impart knowledge. These individuals are Ahad. Yes, they are part of Sunnah Ahad. Yet their messages are obeyed and acted upon. Therefore you can't say, oh, because it's Sunnah Ahad, I will not act upon. You have to. A common person is commanded by Ijma to follow a mufti. Now I'll give you another example. You know, a common person, right? By Ijma, he's like a common person who doesn't have much knowledge of Islam. He can't say, oh, I don't have much knowledge of Islam. Whatever comes in my mind, I will act upon. No. You will go and ask a mufti, isn't it? Yes? So who you're asking? A singular person, or you're asking 20, 30 muftis?
Singular.
Now he says, well, the Sunnah says that you should do this. Yeah? What he will say? No. Until 30 muftis don't give me approval, I'm not going. Nobody does that. Does it? You just take it from him, isn't it? So what you're acting upon, Ahad transmission. It's Ahad transmission. Yes. He may inform something from his assumption. Hence, what is informed by the Prophet ﷺ through a singular narration is more rightful to act. When it is important to act upon a mufti, even he might be his own personal legal judgment, ijtihad, yes? What comes from the Prophet ﷺ as a singular narration should be acted upon. We are commanded to accept two witnesses. Yeah? Do you have any question?
It just arises from going to the mufti. At the end of the day, there are some, like the narrations even themselves going to different feeds or sources, as we are seeing here, like the Hanafi and the Ijma'. So how can a common person take?
No problem. But read the notes whenever you get time tomorrow, yeah? Is that okay? Okay.
Can we stop it here? Because it's quite late for going back home.
Okay, no problem. Is that okay? Are you?
Yeah.
Are you okay with me stopping here? Yeah? Okay.
Thank
So I will give you just a small snapshot. What will happen is that there are conditions of the Malikiyah in accepting Ahad narrations. And there are also conditions of Hanafiya in accepting Ahad narration as and the types of injunctions, evidences of the Sunnah. Try to read yourselves, inshallah. and I'm pretty sure that it is something very good. Yes. So next week I might turn around and I would say that, okay, what are the conditions of the Malikiyya in accepting the Sunnah narration? So you should be able to tell me. When I say what are the conditions of Hanafiya, they've got other of accepting the Ahad narration. You know, they did not automatically, yes, outright accept the Ahad narrations. Yes, they had reservations on that. What are those grounds of reservations in accepting it? Yeah, that is something interesting. That's very interesting. That is, you know, all this is leading to that. All this is what? Leading to what? To that. So that is very important. So that will be your homework for next week. Is that okay? You have to do the explanation, then we'll go. And what we'll do is that, should we, oh yes, remind everyone, next week it will be after Maghrib. Inshallah.
Because it's earlier.
Time will change. So it's good in one way because whatever will happen when Azan of Isha happens, that's it, we stopped. Yes? Assalamu alaikum.